morning, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome back to our returning faces and welcome to our new faces. I love seeing the responses to the entry question in the chat, so please feel free to keep them coming. But I want to go ahead and get us kicked off here. My name is Deja Cyrus, and I'm the manager of organizational development for our sector support team here at United Way of Central Indiana. And today we have a very important topic, especially as we all come to the closing of a calendar year. As the year comes to a close, nonprofits have just such a powerful opportunity, not just to report on their work, but to tell the story of their impact in a way that resonates deeply with supporters. So today's call, is all about elevating those stories with authenticity, intention, and heart. So whether you're preparing for a year-end campaign, crafting an annual report like so many of us are doing, or simply looking to strengthen how you communicate your mission, today we're going to explore some strategies to showcase your wins, honor the communities you serve, and inspire continued support. We'll also take a look at how multimedia and narrative craft and thoughtful messaging can help nonprofits connect more meaningfully with their audiences. So, we're so thrilled to be joined today by three leaders who know this work pretty intimately. We have Ariana Beedie from Indy, Heather Brogden from Porch Marketing, and Alan Bell from GANGGANG Culture. Each of them brings just such a unique perspective on storytelling, from journalism and marketing to cultural strategy and community voice. So, together today, they'll share some just practical guidance and creative insights to help you close out the year with, clarity and impact. No matter what role you're in, you are in the right spot today. So we're going to go ahead and get it kicked off. So Heather, Alan, Ariana, thank you all for being here. I want to start off by just doing some level setting with the audience. If you could just tell us a little bit about your background and how it overlaps with the topic today, before we go ahead and dive in. So Heather, I'll start with you. Ariana will move to you, and then Alan will finish out with you.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me here today. Really excited to be on this panel with these fabulous folks as well, talking about the things we're talking about. My background, I've been a local entrepreneur in the Indianapolis market for over a decade now, primarily serving in the role as a content marketer, focusing on multimedia, photography, video, and really just assisting a lot of our clients on their overall communications. We've done stuff with large corporations, medium businesses, a lot in healthcare, education, and energy, but as well as nonprofits, a lot of arts nonprofits and a variety. Really just being kind of more of a bespoke consultant in the narrative work and the content marketing, to really help bring that to life for our clients to make sure that they're creating content that resonates, engages, and connects in the intended ways that they set out to.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Heather. And then Ariana, we'd love to just hear from you just a little bit about your background and, how it overlaps with today's topic.
Yes. Hi, everyone. And thanks, Deja, for having us. I'm super excited to be here. So yes, Ariana Beatty. I've worked in neighborhoods and I'm sorry, I'm like nervous. I'm super excited. But I've worked in neighborhoods, working with neighbors for the past 10 years around engagement, grants, connecting with folks on just creating projects, building space, and telling their stories through a publication I ran in community, also through my work at Indianapolis Neighborhood Resource Center, working with neighbors on building projects through grants, tracking impact, and of course now those powers combined at Mirror Indy, keeping a pulse on Indy neighborhoods, building trust with neighbors on what they want from local news and what they need. And a lot of that is being authentic, being myself, keeping it very real, and also letting folks know that even the smallest stories can showcase and create the biggest impact. So I'm excited to dive more into that work today. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ariana. And Alan, we'll round it out with you, just a brief introduction of yourself and a little bit of the background.
Sounds good. I'll start by saying my camera is freaking out right now. So if I cut off, you still should be able to hear me, but you might not see me for a little bit. I will say that I feel like I have arrived. Being on the panel with these two here, like, says a lot about where I'm at in my life, and I'm excited about it. So my name is Alan Bell. I currently work with Gang Gang Culture. Historically, I've always worked in the nonprofit space. I started out I'm at the Monroe County Youth Shelter in programming, and my guiding light has always been how to use stories to impact people, whether that's helping them uh, motivate themselves or move across their journey, or helping institutions be able to complete their mission through storytelling and all that stuff. So I have worked at United Way for about 6 or 7 years, 6, 7, uh, and doing impact storytelling with them as well. And recently moved over to Gang Gang Culture to kind of make sure that not only do you get to participate in the cool things like Butter and I Made Rock and Roll, but you also feel the impact that the organization is creating on community and the culture.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. And one thing I did forget to say when I was introducing myself to you all, we love to see your faces. I know it's an early Friday morning, but if you feel comfortable coming on camera, we would love to, just make the digital environment a little bit more intimate. So feel free to come on camera if you choose. And if you have a question at any time, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We have some time set aside at the end for Q&A with the audience, but don't feel like you have to hold on to your questions until the end. So, but thank you all for your introductions. I want to go ahead and dive into the discussion today. And Ariana, I'm going to start with you. A lot of the audience on today's call has a nonprofit presence. So just curious to hear from you. How can nonprofits balance transparency with positivity when sharing that year-end impact without sounding like a press release or too like promotional? How can we keep it authentic?
Well, and I'll just say it's hard to not sound promotional when you're promoting yourself, right? So I mean that's a thing right there. But I say at Mirror Indy, we want to hear from about those smaller stories. Like I think about my time at INRC, I think about the different grants I worked on, and like the neighborhood light pole, or the neighbors I've talked to, that like a neighbor in Norwood who's kept the kids for generations in the neighborhood, or one neighbor who, like the bench, I see that comment. Yes, like those unique smaller things that, like, I want to hear about the organization, but I want to hear about who you're impacting and let them speak for themselves. If it's a quote or something like that, a press release is a press release, and we're not that's not necessarily going to turn me off from the potential of a story, but I really needed to grip me and not sound like the same old thing. So even seeing what other organizations are putting out, how can you make yours different? Even speaking in common language. I hear from through my work, I do a lot of community conversations called Chat and Choose, asking neighbors what they want from news and what they want from local journalists. And a lot of them want to just hear regular, regular speak, conversational speak, super formal. And as a journalist, of course, I'll read that, but for us to write a story, we have to be able to extract that. And of course, we can do the work as journalists, but if you can grip us in the beginning with something unique, something small but mighty, that also shows your impact. We want to see that.
Yeah. And with storytelling and being able to, articulate your impact comes marketing and various tools. So Heather, would just love to hear from you. How can nonprofits use marketing tools such as email marketing, social media, video, just various mediums to tell their year-end impact stories in ways that convert interest into support?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it first starts, as Ari was saying, with that narrative. One of the favorite things that as we kind of get into, and a quote that or a lesson I pulled from the artistic community was through specificity comes universality. So first going and finding that campaign creative, the why, the story, the boots on the ground, connecting to that narrative, and then really looking at the pathways of placement that fit best for that. So, video is definitely a trend that continues to increase. And it's really not just, it kind of reminds me of a lot of when Facebook came out, a lot of businesses would say, we need Facebook. Why do we need it? I don't know, because everyone's doing it. And just jumping on that. And video is similar in that it's a great way to cut through the noise. It's really engaging. It hits all the data, all the statistics. We know that it's a great tool, but instead of just having it, think about the intentionality for each piece of the story to match it where it works best. If it's a newsletter, that's great for that copy and really building almost a mini website in that campaign where you can embed multiple things. So really look at that as more of a full story arc. Video is really great for perspective building. If you want to actually go into your community and get that testimonial of how did it impact that person's lives. And think about that from the specificity that you really want to drive. What did it mean in a way that connects us to all being human? Don't be afraid to look at the details. I think sometimes we think about impact reports and all of the things. We want to make sure that we're declaring our worth in a way that keeps driving in those dollars. But sometimes being able to really connect the small things and make that engagement and connection on a human level helps build that pipeline to where if they connect there, then look at some of the other areas. Statistics and data are great for copy or for short form social media content, having an image and a statistic above it. So really just kind of carving out what is that core narrative, the why, what are we trying to connect on the story, but then taking a look on the pragmatic side of where will that story best be told. And making sure that you're utilizing that space to its best ability, not just trying to square peg round holes, all of the different solutions, but really looking at it holistically so that it does come off in a transformative campaign that actually pushes people down a pipeline to pull the trigger on donating or to create, move that needle that you're trying to create.
Absolutely. So one size doesn't necessarily fit all if we're trying to optimize on that impact. Okay,
Absolutely.
perfect. Perfect. Okay, and Alan, I know a lot of your experience comes from like, impact storytelling. So how do you approach shaping narratives that honor the community lived experiences without, speaking for them or on behalf of the communities that you're telling storytelling for? Oh, you're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you.
I would say the number one thing is understanding that when you think about authentic storytelling, it's not a style, but it is the relationships that you build, right? And so once you have those relationships, it's easier for you to then be able to tell those stories authentically and in ways that represent the community appropriately. And when you understand that, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that every piece of the impact story doesn't have to come from the the person with the lived experience, right? So sometimes great storytelling is figuring out what pieces you need to bring to the table and be a part of whatever piece of content that you're creating, and then that way you can activate the person with lived experience in the way that they feel most comfortable without having to direct them to talk about the funder who they never heard of, or
Yeah.
to talk about the partner who this program wouldn't existed if they had not have thought of it. You know what I mean? Sometimes, in my experience, the client is really moved by the fact that every time I picked up the phone call or had an issue, there was somebody at this organization who answered the phone and met me where I was at. And
Mm,
oftentimes that's not the program. The program is we're giving you food, we're giving you transportation. And so we want to tell the story of food and transportation. But what really changed this person's life is the human that they connected with. And so you may have to bring a few different storytellers or perspectives to the table in order to tell that story holistically. And so that would be my tidbit there. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I know with these initiatives and this intentionality, there are going to be like, some mistakes that are made. So Ariana, would love to just hear from you. What are just some common storytelling mistakes that you see nonprofits make when pitching maybe to journalists or when they are publishing year-end summaries?
You may not hear this from other journalists, or maybe you will, as we are trying to help change the landscape of journalism in Indianapolis. But I don't want to hear from your funder. I love funders, right? So like that's not it. But like I said before, I'm all about hearing these other stories. And so some mistakes are, just not putting much thought into it. Of course, like stylistic things. I edit a lot these days, so I catch a typo real fast. And some of
Mm,
those things makes me think like, okay, come on, we could have taken some time to review, put your best
yeah.
foot forward. And accidents happen. We are in Mercury retrograde, but do a quick double check, make sure you've proofread everything. Um, and make sure you're also getting the right person to tell that story, highlighting the right initiative. Um, we just people have short attention spans anyway, and journalists don't have a lot of time. And so if I have a pile of press releases and there's something that I need to focus on when I already have 5 to 6 stories that I need to go through, speaking from or about our reporters, I need to have the one that's going to grip me the most.
Yeah.
So, even, talk to some other folks, build relationships with journalists as well. I mean, because I can't expect you to have my lens of training. So, make connections with us. My work is so unique that I get to actually build connections with community, but we all have coffee meetings, we all have events and things. And so reach out to someone to just ask some tips, like what would you want to see? What would make an organization pick up this story?
Yeah, absolutely. We're all in this community, this nonprofit space together. I feel like the more that we can lean on each other to, spread, optimize and grow our impact, the better it is for the communities that we're serving. So absolutely, 100% agree. Heather, are there any trends in nonprofit storytelling or digital marketing that organizations should pay attention to this year, either at the tail end of 2025 or in the upcoming year of 2026? Any trends around the digital marketing or storytelling space?
Yeah, I think overall we're really seeing an increase in content. So one of the things that I think was kind of mentioned before is, even if it feels like promoting it, kind of it is the promotion. So I think being able to like look at things and remove some of the rigidness around digital marketing and putting things out there and just put more out there. Use it as a tool to be able to leverage and see the reactions and see what kind of works and know that it can be a bit of an agile thing. I mean, that's what the professionals are doing. We've done it. We know some things that work, but it's also a process. And every audience and every organization is unique in what uniquely fits for you. And one of the things that I tend to see from a just kind of perception and internal culture versus brands that tend to do really well are the ones that are keeping pace with the activity. We all know how busy and noisy it is with so much constant information. And so not being afraid to feel like it has to be perfect in order to put it out there. And I think that we're going to see more and more content to where brands are going to be really content originators and media. Because also, and a great trend that's happening is the accessibility with the tools. It's really quite amazing that you don't need a large production house. You don't need to break the bank, thank goodness for nonprofits, in order to get the content that we're looking at. And new solutions are coming out all the time. So I just got an email recently on Canva is, continuing to develop their video editor platform. And so it really is creating a lot of prosumer tools for content marketing. One that, Alan probably we've joked about like AI voiceover and being able to like tap into some of these things that would used to be costly. I mean, when I started off in the business, in order to record a voiceover, we're doing the script, we're finding the talent, we're going into an audio booth. Now it's literally you pick a tone and it works. And there's no reason not to embrace some of those things because the shelf life is fast. You're not trying to find a Morgan Freeman type narrator for your documentary, but you want to create a more engaging, compelling piece. Don't be afraid to lean into the accessibility of those tools and just create more and more content to see what works, see what doesn't, and kind of feel your way through some of that. Yes, with strategy, but a lot of this is a continuous process. I mean, that's what the tech loves to do, is continuously change the algorithms, switch things up. So it really is one of those things that, yes, quality matters, but quantity is also a part of that game, with consistency and being able to put things out there. So I think really being able to remove that perception that promotion is, shameful, and really just being able to lean in a different direction with a journalism mindset of, no, this is for education, this is for awareness, this is for sharing, and constantly doing it as if your organization has its own media hub from that standpoint. I know that may sound a little daunting, but if you start to look at some of the tools and what's out there, even if you have one person that has a part of that as their job description, there's a lot in the next, I would say, year particularly, that's really gonna bubble to the top as far as how easy it can be to create compelling content with some intentionality and education around the tools.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually now learning about new AI tools in the data and technology module of the Nonprofit Learning Center right now. And like you said, there's so many AI platforms that you could type in a prompt, do a voiceover for XYZ, go grab a cup of coffee and come back, and you have an entire podcast put together, a presentation to go with it. There are so many tools that are meant to like supplement and work with the work and not replace it. So definitely want to make sure we're leaning into that and still adding the human voice, because no artificial intelligence is perfect, and it will sound
First
like it was
drafts.
constructed, yeah, by AI if
It's
you
a
do not
first
put that
draft.
human touch.
Everything with AI is a first draft. You are still
Yes.
the editor. You are still the director. You're still the
Mhm.
human. Never forget those parts. But if
1000%.
any creative, anyone who creates those things, I think, having a first draft done is fantastic.
Takes off the
You're able
load.
to then bring in that level of discernment
Mhm.
that says, does this connect? Does this not? And it really starts removing us from check the box content to how can we have that first draft fill some space, and then bring that next level discernment, editing, directing into, how does this actually work out?
Absolutely. And in the spirit of collaboration, Alan, I just would love to hear from you. How can nonprofits collaborate with various artists or, cultural workers, just anyone in the community to help bring depth and authenticity to those year-end campaigns?
Yeah. So I'll say a couple things here is to piggyback off what Heather just said is really understanding one, what is your mission? And what we are trying to do at Gang Gang right now is we understand that we have to post, we got to be on the forefront of content. But what we're thinking about is how does our content not only promote what we're doing, but how can we turn it into impact? And so, as an organization who is all about uplifting artists, when we create content around an artist, it is promoting our organization, but it ultimately is helping lift the creative sector by loaning that artist our platform.
Mm.
And so, as we start to uplift these different things and what we call content impact goals. So we're trying to educate people on things. We are uplifting artists, trying to inspire folks, inviting people to participate in things. Every time we do those, we're counting it as a piece of our impact. Because if we do those things properly, then it will also move our mission forward. And what I'll say about how other organizations can bring artists in is really to understand that you probably are working with a ton of artists on a day-to-day basis, right? So if you think about artistry, sometimes we just immediately go to like painters or maybe even musicians, but like your writers are artists. I always get introduced through Gang Gang as Alan is an artist too. He does video storytelling. And
Mhm.
so you're working with artists. The way you craft the email, there's some art to it. You know what I mean? And so what separates art though is the technique and then also the perspective. And so what I say is if you look at your organization and the artists that you're working with on a day-to-day basis to see what is the perspectives that you have and what are maybe are the perspectives that you are missing from your artistry and your artists that you're working with, and then start to try to cultivate that from community. The other thing I can tell you is that in a lot of these, I've been to so many of these community organizations, and there's so many great artists who are there, right?
Mhm.
And so how do you cultivate the artists that are coming up in your programming, right? And give them space or introduce them to organizations like ours in the art fair that's in town with a commitment to have 75% of the artists be from Indiana. And then we're moving to LA and 25% of the artists will be from Indiana. Those are great opportunities that like people are living in that time right now and you could take advantage of. I'd also say really opening your doors, like we talked about earlier, authentic storytelling and all of this stuff that we're talking about is about relationship. And so opening your doors to artists to understand and feel your program and what are the needs you're trying to meet and who is your community. And when you do that, what you'll see is that they will then find perspective and be inspired to create on your behalf. And so and partner with you on things. And then if you have some budget, that's always great as well. But one of the greatest stories I always tell, it's my like favorite story to tell. And Samson Levingston, who is
Mhm.
through two eyes, walking talks. If your organization hasn't like collaborated with Samson at all, you're behind. I'm just gonna tell you that. But one of the things he said to me, and I was like, yo, this is it. This is like, is that what started his whole movement is he was walking downtown and he saw the mural of the jazz players from Indiana. And he thought to himself, what? This happened here? Let me go
Mhm.
find out more. In in his search for more inspired everything that he's doing today. And so if you give people the opportunity to be inspired by what you're doing and maybe search for more, you'll create authentic collaborations with artists and they'll be excited to work with you and it'll feel like something that was just like supernatural.
Yeah, absolutely. And for them to have the opportunity to be inspired, you have to push the content out there to Heather's point
Yes.
earlier. Absolutely. Thank you, Alan. I have a few things I want to pick, each of your brains here about because you each bring a different lens, you each bring a different perspective to this topic. So, how do each of your sectors, journalism, marketing, arts and culture, just approach the idea of impact differently, and how can nonprofits learn from each of those perspectives? So, Ariana, I'll begin with you. Heather, I'd love to hear your perspective after that, and then Alan, you can round us out.
So I love that you asked me to jump in first. Impact, of course, is everything as a nonprofit newsroom, but as a nonprofit newsroom that's trying to do news differently, really reflecting what's going on in indie neighborhoods. We have an impact Slack channel that, I mean, the smallest thing. I manage our text channel, so if you get the in the mirror text, that's me. Definitely sign up if you don't get them. We text out the news, but the good texts I get, the questions, the responses to stories, that's impact. When I run into somebody in the community and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I love Mirror Indy, thank you," or "I want to be a documenter," or as a documenter, I went to a public meeting and I learned XYZ about my kid's school. That's impact. We look at the big things, of course, the funding, the major big J stories, but and I feel like I'm a broken record, but these small stories, the smallest neighbor that you think is maybe not important is probably the most important. That's impact. So if I can get I think about my block and my neighbors that aren't as connected, but it's just a different flavor over here. But if I could get my neighbor to just talk to me about local news for a second, that's impact. So we try to look at everything. Our social, we tell story, we do storytelling different on social. I love everything Heather's been saying. We really take that to heart. So how we're storytelling on Instagram and how people are connecting with us there, that's impact. Everything is impact to
Yeah,
us. And
absolutely.
so and celebrate that.
Yeah, chiming in there. I think that, when you think from a marketing impact, I mean, we're always the impact we're after is really in that kind of black and white, some of the numbers, the data, making sure, it accomplishes what we're trying to achieve. So as marketing, it's really that business solution side. That's how I first and foremost attach that kind of impact there. That's job security for me. I know if we're creating content that yields that kind of return for the organization, they know it's a worthy investment to help them continue to grow. But one area of impact that I have seen that is not often taken into account is again in the process of creating these things. I think if you're able to flip your perspective instead of it being kind of that a Hoosier humbleness of not wanting to necessarily spotlight or this or that. I oftentimes will come into clients and am really inspired and really attached to the stories that we capture and the work that we do. And what I often see is in the process of finding, highlighting, and exploring those aspects of content and sharing it is often a great way to create internal impact of awareness. I think sometimes awareness and inspiration internally. I mean, we're working on a piece right now that's it's more of an internal communications, but we're doing a lot of interviews with customers, employees, and what I'm finding is it's the process that is really giving senior leadership more awareness on that ground level into how people are seeing and feeling, and it's really just bringing a lot of the good feelings around. I think that oftentimes organizations and the people who lead them and work so hard day to day to make the impact that, really matters on the nonprofit, oftentimes don't necessarily take the time to appreciate and soak in all of the good work that they're doing. And so a part of the process when, sharing this impact externally through marketing can also be a celebratory way for internal reflection and slowing down a bit. Because as to Alan's point, which I could not agree more, the best narratives are found through relationships. And I think what that whole process really causes you to do is in order to get the good stuff, you have to slow down, you have to be present, and you have to really soak in what matters. And I think that process in itself of doing it as a team with more of an abundance mindset of, hey, we're going to promote ourselves and we're going to do this and we're going to do it boldly because we should be proud, and that kind of attitude towards things, I think can really have a great impact internally on reinforcing a culture of why you're doing it. And it really helps to make everyone needs to be a little bit more friendly with marketing and promotion. Everyone needs to look at these things. I know, like, I know social media, like everybody at this point kind of hates it, but we're all addicted to it. But like, being able to advocate for those things, they're just tools. They're just tools and platforms. And I think the more everybody feels a little bit like a promotional marketer, the better the organization's going to do. And I think when you feel that best when it just comes organically because you're excited to share because you have been touched by it. So I think really looking at some of that process as well as being able to have an impact and shift a culture to be more promotion oriented. It's not a shameful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's advocacy, and it really has a great impact overall when you learn to be able to speak. With pride and those things about that and have those stories. So really, even be able to teach everyone on the team how to be a storyteller. I think that also has an impact because that's your frontline folks. So I think really taking a look at the process and how that can have an impact is maybe just a little bit of a hidden gem outside of of course, all the metrics that we want to hit, the money we want to raise, the data, the likes, the views, all of those things that are in the usual KPIs.
Absolutely. This is definitely modern day advocacy work. And you raise a good point about just not only training your leadership to do it, but also your staff. So that way you can, optimize on the impact as well. But Alan, I would love to hear from you as well, just from a, arts and culture standpoint, just how you all approach impact differently and what nonprofits can learn from that as well.
So I'll piggyback off of what both of those two said. Is excellent, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. The way that we are starting to think about impact in this really digital landscape is how do we know that it's important for us to educate people on why arts and culture is important. And the best way to do that and reach the largest audience is through our digital platforms. And so while it is ultimately promotion, it is also ultimately us extending our impact, right? And so when we look at everything that we post on a day-to-day basis as a arm of impact, what we end up seeing is that it not only motivates us to post more and to hopefully reach more people, but it justifies the cost of some of these productions, right? So ultimately, we work in this space where we feel like the camera has to be on. We need to be connecting with people online. But then if you don't put it anywhere, then you create a piece of content that you show at one meeting and you put it online and there's 10 people get to see it. We start to think about how do we then break that into 15 pieces of content. So then now we take our 10 to 100. And then once you start to look at if 100 people, if I could walk outside right now and tell 100 people about our message, that's a big deal, right? If
Yeah.
I could do that every day, that's a big deal. And so it's just really shifting the way that we think about impact and the way that we think about numbers, and to be able to use what's happening on social media to leverage that in our storytelling as impact, but then also looking at some of the metrics that are more uh, um, uh, uh, not qualitative, right? Quantitative. Which one is numbers? Sorry,
Quantitative.
quantitative. There we go. The
Yeah.
quantitative qualitative thing is um, we can judge the content based off, do we feel like it educated people to the best of its ability, right? And then start to tweak it in that sense, right? So it's not just like we want to figure out how to get more people to see it, but we want to educate people even better through our digital platforms. Did that piece inspire people to the best that they could be inspired, and then start to tweak it that way? And once we start honing in on those things, what we then realize, it then increases the reach or increases the impact of those things. And so it just turns into this like a cyclical a movement that we're trying to do. So I think that's how we're doing it different. um but because the culture of where we are dictating that, right? And so
Yeah.
if you're in it and you understand what's happening, then you start to make adjustments to meet people where they at, and that's just one of the ways to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. And we have just a few more minutes before we open the call up for Q&A here. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or you can come off mute to ask. But before we close out with questions, I'd love to just hear from each of you. We know with, storytelling and storytelling that year in impact at nonprofits comes a lot of the data and the numbers and trying to speak to our impact with evidence and support. So how can the nonprofit leaders, professionals on this call strike the right balance between sharing the impactful data and the numbers and all of the data that comes behind all of this impact with crafting that emotionally resonant narrative in the storytelling. So Heather, I'll begin with you. Ariana will go to you, and then Alan will finish out with you, and then we'll open up for Q&A.
Yeah. I think that, being able to have a balance of both is really important. It really appeals to, if you think a diverse learning audience, we all attach impact in different ways. Some people really like all story. They want to know on a human element. Some people really want to see data and see the numbers and differences. So I think that it takes all to make the world go round. And so I think really kind of going back to some of the first comments I had and looking at that intentionality. What can't you say with numbers? And what's human, and lean on that for in that area, and then take a look at where are numbers best and how do they support each other. So I think that's what I usually find as some of the best pieces from resonating on what you're looking for is you can technically have D all of the above. Like in a multimedia piece, it can have numbers that pop up while someone is giving testimonial about that, but it's saying it in a different way. They're saying it from a personal experience. They're one of those numbers. But then being able to bring up the data that supports that on a larger macro scale creates a larger impact on the audience because they're having it from multiple points of connection and they're seeing it grow and build. So I think definitely being able to, always integrate both and have a place for both. Because I think if you go so storytelling, then it can seem like a lack of transparency or potentially even accountability. Like, are you hitting those numbers? Are you doing those things in the way that your mission says you are? But also, if you're just into that, then it can be so black and white that you're not going to appeal to a lot of people on the heartstrings and get them to move from point A to point B. So I think really being able to just find that balance through the intentionality of what and how you share and where. I think that's something too that like, sharing videos on your digital platforms great, but like, sharing one a day can be a little time consuming. So that's where leaning into those numbers and really just kind of separating it. And again, the pathways and intentionality.
Absolutely.
I plus one everything Heather said. At Mirror Indy, we talk a lot about innovation. How can we be creative? There's a saying, let your freak flag fly, meaning do you have a wild idea? Let's do it. Let's figure it out. So merge everything. I love the D, all of the above. Think about how you can get creative. You don't have to keep up with whatever trend. I certainly am not up to date with whatever trend, and all of our algorithms are different. But think about like what, is it a reel? Are you a lot of our reporters will just sit down and just record it, just talk to the viewer. So think about that, but also I can't speak to the different certain techniques and marketing techniques as far as the numbers, but I know what I want to see. And what I want to
Yeah.
see are the faces, are the people doing the work, not just the top people at the top, but people all through. And just celebrating the work that you do, because if you're excited about it and you love it, we want to see it. We want to celebrate you too. And think about where you want to be. Do you have a TikTok? Is that a space you want to be in? I'm not saying you need to be, but get creative and get funky with it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'll say there is this local
Your
storyteller.
microphone is a little
Oh,
distorted. I'm not sure. Is it? It's not just me. Okay. I don't know.
I was not ready for that.
No. Sam, well, that's creative. That was very creative, Alan. I'm not sure what's going on now.
I know what's happening. Sorry.
There it
Now we're
goes.
back. Okay. Sorry. I've got a soundboard and I put this book on top of it and I accidentally hit the button. So I will tell you, there's some sounds on here that could have went way worse. So we're good. All right. So um I'll say there's this local storyteller here in town named Sally Perkins, and she just published this book called From Story to Action. And she's one of my mentors. And one of the things she talks about is forest stories and tree stories. And so it's like you tell the story from the forest that is encompasses everything that is in the landscape, and it's where your numbers are, and it's the high level things, and then you step into the forest and you tell stories about the trees, and you start to tell stories about the people, right? And so that oftentimes you can just tell us a really good story about the trees, that impacts people, that emotionally resonates with folks. But then there are also folks who are always going to say, well, what about the numbers? And then that's when you step back and then tell that story about the forest. And to the point of Heather and Ariana, is that you can also find a way to then tell both of those things, right? So sometimes you have this forest story and then there's a beat in it in which you step into it and then tell the story about the trees. And it's kind of like we talked about earlier, finding the right voices for the different pieces of your story. So the person who is the tree doesn't have to carry the weight of telling the story of the forest, right? And given the authenticity of having the tree being your story and not just somebody at the highest level trying to tell the story for this person is also a way to be super authentic. Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alan. Well, I definitely want to allow some space for Q&A now. We have about a little less than 15 minutes left on the call. So if you have any questions around any tools, AI tools that are used to help with storytelling or striking the right balance or year-end reports, those kinds of things, Please feel free to, you can come off mute and ask it verbally. You can use the Q&A function on Zoom or drop it in the chat box. Um, it looks like we have a question from Mel. Love the forestry analogy, same. What's Sally's last name? It looks like Shannon dropped
Perkins. Yep, there it is.
Perkins. Okay, perfect. Perkins. So Sally Perkins, and you said oh, there's the link. Okay.
Book.
Story action
Good book.
transformation. Okay,
Good book.
perfect. Yeah, I'll be sure to include that link in the follow-up email as well. So, if you guys want to explore that, it'll be included in there. Oh, thanks, Molly. Everyone knows about Sally.
I'd love to chime in on something that just to kind of share as I was thinking of this, and Alan kind of brought it up earlier. If I were to give one kind of piece of advice right now to any organization that looks to share stories as part of their overall mission, it would be to become a bit of a content hoarder of what you have. As Alan kind of mentioned, they have the camera, they were doing one video, but then they're breaking it up. So I've been really transforming my business in the last year as all the technology has changed, because it's really going to shift who owns what creative service and how. And I love all the accessibility. I think it's going to really take more emphasis on the authenticity, the storytelling, all that intentionality, which I think all of us creators do love. But the one technical piece of advice that I would look at is look at your creative content assets as assets. It's an interview, not just a deliverable video. It's B-roll, it's statistics, it's design, it's all of those elements. And the more effort right now that you can put into organizing and managing, and then the deeper that organization is going to go, you almost start to look at your assets as data. So with all of this AI, all of the different tools that are coming up, that's going to make the output much faster, easier, not necessarily better if you don't do it with the intentionality up front. But one of those things that I'm recommending to organizations and work that we're getting into is organizing the assets in a way that if you look at it, you're going into your art studio and everything is organized and has a place so that when you want to sit down and create a piece, you just need to know the vision of what you're going for. You know where the colors are at, you know where the tools are at, all of those things. And that's something that I don't see happen with a lot of organizations is they get content deliverables, they put them out there, and then they die on a hard drive somewhere, or they don't even get from their vendor the fullest extent, or it gets lost with turnover. So, really being able to create an organized system with some of those assets will really create increased value. And then that value will lead to impact.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Heather.
I can add to that. I will also say something that I think is becoming more and more important to me as I'm realizing this, and especially with AI and all this stuff, is that when you are utilizing stories in this way, also understand that it's like a person's story that they actually own. And so, and I'll say I'm guilty of this thing as well, where it's like we take this person's story and then we use it for the next 5 years in
Mm,
every piece of marketing content. Our image is now the face of these things. And so you when you take a person's face and you put it on the side of a bus, you essentially make them the face of whatever this issue is, right? And so maybe in this moment they have agreed to do that, but 10 years from now, they might not want to see themselves on the side of a bus as the face of whatever new issue or thing that you're doing. So, I'm seeing this too with media releases and this ideal of, I feel like folks are preparing media releases with the ideal, can we use your voice in AI or can we do, and so it's just to really think of like, how do you make sure the owner of the story is the person whose story it is as a human service organization, right?
mm,
And not hoarding their story for yourself without even talking to them about it, right? So use it in the way, but then just be thinking about them as you're doing it.
yeah, that's really great insight, Alan. And are there any other additional, just taking that a step further, just culturally responsible storytelling techniques, approaches that nonprofits should be going or taking on as they go about storytelling?
I like to tell folks to check your gut at the door. Just check your values. Where do you
Mm,
land? Because that's going to inform how you storytell with your organization. It's through your organization, but it's coming from you, it's coming from whoever. Talk to different groups. I'm gonna plug. I love INRC. I'll support INRC forever. Talk to INRC. Talk to Sharon. Go through some trainings as an organization. See what resources are out there that can help you learn to tell stories in the right way and not, potentially tokenize or, like Alan said, make somebody the face of something when that was just that one time. Um, but definitely start with just checking your gut, checking your organizational values. What do you all stand for? And then really try to move through that or adjust if you need to.
yeah, absolutely. And Mel, I saw in the chat you have a question.
I do, kind of to the point that Alan was just making. We're a free clinic and we have some pretty impactful patient stories. And we feel like the power dynamic is we don't want to ask to use our patients' photos. We really want to respect their privacy. A lot of our patients don't want people to know they're going to a free clinic. And so the stories are really impactful and we can change the names. That's easy. But I know stock photos are such a like, make everybody groan. But I don't know if you guys, how you feel about that, or if you have any suggestions for how to deal that with that. And our patients, so many of them, they share, how what we do has changed their life and they would do that if we asked them. I just don't think it's appropriate to ask them. A couple times we've had some folks talk to our donors, but that were really like, seriously, I mean, this has changed my life. If I want to say thanks, if there's anything I can do. And so we've had someone just talk to very small groups of donors, but from a public standpoint, I really want to protect the privacy. And how can I make that connection with people without showing the faces of our patients?
So one thing that comes to mind for me, and I just looked it up, but StoryCorps had done a 9/11 initiative to preserve those stories. And obviously, some of that's really sensitive and was really in-depth storytelling. And one of the ways that they just kind of created some more space respecting privacy was to lean into some illustration. There's so many different things that can represent a person, that it can be abstract. This is kind of almost leaning into the art. I think being able to kind of create space and separate it from the realism, but also like that can further enhance it. Those videos that were kind of recalling a lot of the 9/11 stories. Some would get really abstract in some of their illustration. I think really being able to kind of look at that away and a little tidbit if you ever want to go down that route. The animated short videos for Oscar nomination are always really fantastic storytelling examples done in an abstract, different kind of way. They're always incredibly creative and really kind of open your mind to it doesn't have to be that direct. And actually, sometimes the indirectness and the subtlety can add to how powerful the message is.
Mm, true.
Thank you. Thanks for that. We actually use graphics on our mobile unit because we don't want people to say, "Oh, I see a white person, a black person, or whatever." We don't want it. We want it to be so, accessible for everyone. So I don't know why I never thought of illustrations. Thank you. That's a great idea.
I'll add that when I'm doing stories with people and it's a story similar to like what you're talking about, where it's like Ariana said, my gut is like, oh, let me check. I always ask like, why are you here with us today? And I want to see, is it because this person is so compelled that they want to be a storyteller and then their motive is like, I'm gonna say self-serving a bit, but like they're ready for this, or if it is because it's tied to like I really like what they did for me. And because I feel like sometimes folks feel like they have to share their story in order to continue to get services and be kind of let in the door, and you don't necessarily want that to be the thing. But I also will say I think that what you described in that discernment to me is also a part of your story that can be included in that, right? And so if I need services and I know that you're thinking that way, then like it makes me want to go to you to get services, right? So I would say like add that into the communication that you have of like this is part of what how we think about the services and to me I think it will resonate the same way.
Thank you so much.
Those are really good perspectives. And it looks like we have another question. Tracy, you have a question?
Yes, this is kind of extension of maybe what Mel was hitting on, but I wanted to know how do you gather stories in a uniform way without imposing on a client? I think a lot of times we may miss out on getting stories and we don't want to just impose and say, hey, tell us your story because we know they've had a great like it would be a great story, but you don't want to just impose upon them. So how do you do it in a uniform way and do it timely? So it's so consistent. So do you put something on a website or send a text link or to the survey, like, and just make it more consistent? What's the best uniform way to do that?
I can jump in on that and say all of the above. Create some sort of form, some sort of framework questions, whether you have folks on your team that are reaching out to people that are getting the same questions. It's a form that you can text out to folks that they can click, do it real quick, don't have too many questions, that can turn people off from completing it, but emailing it out, putting it on the website. If you have a blog on your site that you tell stories, plug it in there. Definitely on social and as many places as possible. Also QR codes. With a lot of my work in community engagement, I'm doing flyers. I'm trying to meet in different spaces. So if you can print some flyers, get some people to post them up at the library, share it with your network, and then have folks share it out as well to try to get as many stories, as, I guess, specifically from your network. But try as many avenues and platforms that work for you. But I think a form, having it concise, the same questions will get you those same answers, what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Consistency is key. Thanks so much, Tracy. And we're coming up on time here, so I definitely want to take a few minutes, or take a second to just give a virtual round of applause for our amazing panelists this morning. Like so many, just powerful insights. I think being in this work, it's never, easy. And especially when we're trying to sum up all that we've done in a year, it can feel very overwhelming and it can just come at you a few different ways. So you guys were really able to give some just really digestible insights and tips and tricks. And I hope that our audience was able to take a lot away from this conversation. And amazing round of applause for our audience as well for showing up and being present and engaged. We'd love to have you all for the last sector call of the year, which will take place on December 12th. And that'll just cover navigating, unexpected risks. Working in nonprofit, we know that things come up and we're constantly having to pivot and adjust. So how can we mitigate some of those risks and be prepared as much as we can be in this day and age? But again, happy Friday to everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your engagement, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.